Da-di-da-di-da-da-di-da. Da-di-da-di-da-da-di-da. What do you hear over the air? CQ serenade. So you don't know just what it means. Dust your shoes off, shake out your jeans. Get on your feet, jump to the beat of CQ serenade.
The dream of most DXers is to go on a DXpedition. But the ultimate dream is to put a new country on the air. Few DXers get this opportunity, but Marty Lane, OH2BH, has created his own opportunity 4 different times. In the early part of 1988, rumors started circulating that Marty was going to once again activate a new country. By June '88, the word was out that it would be Maly Vysotsky Island, a tiny uninhabited island in the Gulf of Finland, which Finland had leased from the USSR in 1962. Not only would it be a new country, but it would be the first ever joint East-West DXpedition. This gives you an idea of the overall area across the border from Finland. It used to be part of Finland, but was lost to the Russians at the end of the 1939-1940 Winter War. Today, the border is heavily guarded, and the Finns have no access to that area except as members of tourist groups. Entry to the area requires a visa and a statement of purpose for your visit. The area is of great strategic importance since this bay protects the city of Leningrad and is dotted with Soviet Baltic Fleet bases accommodating naval vessels that operate in the Gulf of Finland down to the gateway to the Atlantic Ocean. What about Maly Vysotsky Island? How does it fit into this general picture? What's the purpose of Finland leasing an island in the virtually boiling waters of the USSR? In 1962, Finland and the Soviet Union signed an agreement under which the Russians leased that section of the Sama Canal which runs from the Finnish border across Soviet territory to the Bay of Vyborg. The Lake District of Finland is 220 feet above sea level, and the Sama Canal with its 8 locks serves as a gateway for shipping from the Finnish Lake District to the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea. The lease was granted for 50 years, and it covers the canal itself and a surrounding buffer zone all the way from the Finnish border to the last lock. It was Finns who built the canal as it stands today, including the massive locks for raising and lowering boats passing from level to level in the canal. MV Island is separated from the rest of the canal region. It stands alone as a 1-mile-long piece of land. Originally, it was leased from the Russians for storage purposes to temporarily house all the freight that was scheduled to be shipped through the canal. The plan never materialized, and the island was left uninhabited inside Russian territory, leaving both Russian landmass and Russian islands between Finland and MV Island itself. By action of the ARRL, the island was accepted as another country on November 17, 1970. The decision was quite straightforward and unconditional and stated in no uncertain terms. At such time as operation takes place from MV Island, we'll make an official announcement of its addition to countries list. The first operation from MV Island is now history. The administrative status of the island remains unchanged and is not conflicting with existing DXCC country criteria. So the country is here today, and the DXpedition Group is happy to bring forth the details for members of the worldwide amateur radio community to examine. Getting permission to do DX operating from MV Island has never been a problem. The problem is how to cross critical USSR territory to reach the island. All the dozen or so recorded attempts, some of them involving our head of state, never got anywhere. MV Island simply seemed inaccessible. Reaching this Finnish government building number 110055 was dreamed of by many aspiring DXpeditioners. It was Pertti, OH2RF, who was the first amateur radio operator to set foot on the island, luckily for the purpose of activating MV Island for the first time ever. The newly born spirit of Glasnost was making some headway. Just recently, Finland and the Soviet Union set up the first ever East-West joint venture in the business field. NUR2AR is executive officer of the very first one. A DXer of honor roll caliber and a frequent visitor to Finland to see his Finnish business partners, he established contact with the appropriate officials and headed the negotiations while the MV project was being discussed among various Soviet authorities back in Moscow. The missing paperwork needed for crossing USSR territory untouched with all the necessary gear and supplies was a subject that UR2AR addressed with great success. It was one of those sunny days in July when the Sama Canal authorities received a note from Red Square indicating that the Russians were now flashing the green light for the D-Expedition Group to cross USSR territory on their way to the destination, the Finnish island of Maly Vysotsky. And this is resting in the canal zone, with that serious look on our faces. Yes, we are next-door neighbors with the USSR, but the Iron Curtain runs right here, separating them from us. Of old, a high barrier, particularly in the world of amateur radio when it comes to the question of human contacts and ham operators meeting each other to do things together. As Finland's IARU liaison officer, John, OH5NZ, had met with the Box 88 people a number of times in the past on IARU business, but making a joint D-expedition with them to an uninhabited island was something new. Transportation was to be provided by the canal authorities, and they were determined to accompany us to the final destination just to make sure. It took less than 2 hours to reach the far end of the canal, and now it was just a matter of loading the boat. It was some 800 pounds of equipment that had to be ferried along, including all our drinking water and gasoline. The KLM beam was pre-assembled, and we also carried a backup generator in addition to a brand new 3-kilowatt Honda.
Behind the bar.
Nosta pää yli sieltä.
Yläpää.
Hyvä, John.
A 50-foot motorboat named the Vera was made available to us. All the boats used on the canal were named after girls associated with that part of pre-war Finland. Remember Vera. Course set for MV Island. We were to sail through Karelia, a former battlefield which had seen some pretty fierce combat action during World War II. Old-timers might remember it as another DXCC country in those other years when it counted as UN-1 land. We were under strict orders not to approach Russian land, but to stay right on course for the island. We passed settlements that were very familiar to us. This view of the city of Viborg was taken with a telephoto lens. It was once the capital of that part of Finland. Our instructions notwithstanding, Marty, OH2BH, took this picture of the hometown of his parents, the one that he had heard so much about. Entering the Coast Guard station set our hearts thumping nervously. How on earth would we be allowed to zigzag our way past all those heavily armed naval ships? Now we understood why our little island had been out of range for so long. They surely paid attention to us, and it seemed they acted under orders from high-ranking government officials. The Uras Coast Guard base is located just across the bay from MV Island. Here, we would probably be entering and leaving USSR territory all at the same time. This was a checkpoint and a meeting place with the other half of the D-Expedition Group. Yes, they were waiting for us there, and helicopters were flying overhead, making us feel like real VIPs. Getting permission to take this picture required some real effort on our part. The previous shot was certainly an accident. This light is located at the entrance to MV Island, so navigation was no problem. It was just a matter of setting foot on another new DXCC country, we hoped. The pre-war piers and other landing facilities are all gone, with only some debris left. The island looks like one solid greenhouse, apparently with no open space. There may have been Russians living out here after the war, but at least since the island was leased to Finland 25 years ago, no one has been on the island to do gardening or forest work. Having disembarked and set foot on MV Island, it was time to unload. All the excitement of putting a new one on the air was just around the corner, assembling the station and firing it up. Our operation was linked with the IARU Radio Sport contest and was due to run for 96 hours only. There were evident problems. Our 4-day window, would it be based on UTC time, Finnish time, or maybe local Russian time? What was the official time on the island anyway? Everything looked nice and peaceful in the landing area. Finns had built a fairly steady-looking wooden jetty for landing purposes. We had arrived, the 6 of us. This is NUR2AR putting the pre-assembled KLM tribander in place. It was decided that we would operate on 14 megahertz only since the use of only one transceiver was allowed for this initial effort. It was agreed with the authorities that for this first operation, just one signal would be heard. There was enough open space for erecting our 40-foot tower we had brought with us to the island together with the rest of the gear. All the equipment was Western style, and this was the first time our Russian partners had ever had a chance for a hands-on look at such gear. They were all very excited, but quickly familiarized themselves with our bells and whistles. Gene, UZ3AU, was a well-built Tarzan type out of Box 88, very clever with his hands and powerful. All the wartime bunkers and trenches were covered with lush vegetation, and falling into one of them, Gene injured his elbow badly right at the start of our operation. We were glad he managed without medication. It just looked great against the blue sky. The 4 days we spent on the island were absolutely superb weather-wise, and we saw no clouds and had no rain. Similarly, we were blessed with excellent propagation conditions and experienced 24-hour openings on 14 megahertz. The power plant was situated down at the waterline, and this 3-kilowatt Honda was running without interruption throughout the 100-hour period we spent on the island. Only oil was changed once. This is one of the sleeping sites near the tower. There was more than enough time for resting since the 6 of us had just one piece of equipment to run. That kind of situation posed a major diplomatic challenge for us to tackle because everybody was keen to get a chance to operate. But we had to make sure that the best resources would be around for major critical openings. This was the only building on the island put up since the territory was leased to Finland. It had some storage facilities and a small setup for cooking. We used the building as an operating room to protect us against possible poor weather and myriads of mosquitoes. The station got on the air. MV Island hit the DX bands. The pileups were huge, despite the fact that our expedition materialized on very short notice. The final go-ahead only came on the preceding Sunday, and the group was on its way by Wednesday. Our equipment consisted of a Kenwood line TS940S and TL922, running the full legal limit. MV Island was a lively neighborhood some 40 years ago, with many houses lining the main street. This is Main Street, MV Island, the way it looks today. Most of the houses were destroyed during the war, and now there were full-grown trees in the middle of the road. Surely an exotic and mysterious island. One of the top DX types in Finland, Henry OH1NK, was born on MV Island, and he was still a young kid when he had to leave. He told us where to look for it, and we found the house. In relatively good shape, considering the fact that it was left vacant more than 40 years ago. Henry became a silent key shortly after our DXpedition. He lived that past 18 years in hopes someone would be able to operate from his place of birth. He lived to make a contact with us, but passed away before he received his QSL. What does the island look like today? It is strictly forbidden to take pictures around the island or to approach any of the nearby islands. Look at this. MV Island is surrounded by many Russian islands with tall watchtowers manned by guards clearly visible on most days. They surely want to know what is happening on MV Island whenever it is temporarily populated. After sunset, there was lively activity around the island. These monsters were patrolling in our immediate vicinity, and they made us feel like well-guarded VIPs on the island.
Having secured all the permissions for this de-expedition, we felt like real winners in view of the numbers of men and hardware that our neighbors in the east had to assign to this operation. Now we have touched on some aspects of the early history of the island and witnessed the sensitivity of the current situation. Let's forget past history and politics. We went to the island for the purpose of ham radio to conduct the first ever East-West de-expedition from what has been recognized as another new DXCC country. This is the entire gang behind the success at 4J1FS. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Boris, UW3AX, on his first ever de-expedition. Boris is the USSR Radio Sports Federation officer for Foreign Relations and also serves as their IARU representative. While not on the de-expedition trail, Boris is working as editor-in-chief of the RSF radio magazine with a circulation of more than 180,000. A big gun ham out of the USSR. Gene, UZ3AU, is technical director of Box 88. And he is also responsible for their laboratory operations at RSF headquarters. He too was on his first de-expedition and found the Western equipment quite exciting, reliable, and not leaving much room for field repairs. A good sturdy man, always ready to climb any tree of any height. N, UR2AR, a veteran DXer out of Estonia. He organized a famous Franz Jofsland de-expedition a few years back. N is on the ARRL honor roll and knows in every detail what this game is all about. He found the never-ending pile-ups heavier than he had ever thought, and sometimes he walked away from the station to seek some assistance. N called himself a bit rusty pile-up operator. John, OH5NZ, was a key figure and coordinator of the MV Island project in our dealings with the Finnish authorities. John also helped to coordinate the numerous attempts made in earlier years to activate MV Island. In the end, he came up with a precise plan of action to make the case a success. John is the Foreign Relations Liaison of the Finnish Amateur Radio League. Pertti, OH2RF, is DX manager and columnist of the Finnish Amateur Radio League. He is another 300-plus country type in spite of his young age. Pertti was selected to represent the ranks of OHDX types for this very important event. He would have been ready to run this 100-hour operation alone. His steam was extraordinary. Marty, OH2BH, a veteran de-expeditioner who is used to tackling the big pile-ups. Marty was responsible for much of the logistics and for making sure that the actual operation would leave a happy audience. Are there many of you who did not make a QSO? This is the fourth new country put on by Marty for inclusion in the DXCC program. Annobon Island, Market Reef, Western Sahara, and now Maly Vysotsky Island. It was this beacon installation that galvanized amateur bands into action for some 100 hours. Toward the end of the operation, we wanted to show up briefly on the low bands. Gene and Boris made a wooden center insulator, and we were ready to fire up on the low bands for a few hours. At least once a day, all operators except one gathered around the same pot. The meals were not luxurious, but they were hot and well prepared. De-expedition chow is at its very best when the culinary occasions turn into DX meetings with all the talk focusing on DX-related topics. Hopefully all you DXers out there like big meals and a bit of classical music. Most DX types like to put on a little extra weight just in case they might face some hard times in the DX vineyards or for fear of running out of food on the de-expedition site. De-expedition operators are rarely known to be Weight Watchers. It was interesting to note that the USSR DX types wanted to have a formal meeting at least once a day. Usually, the discussions were on East-West relations. Speeches were made to pledge eternal friendship and to stress the commitment to peace and international solidarity, as the saying goes over there. The operation was approaching its end. We seemed to be reaching the target for a fair balance between different geographical areas, working 5,000 stateside and 5,000 Europeans, and even making some 2,500 long-haul Japanese happy. Since everything was done on one band only, we surely maximized the head count of different people making contact with MV Island. It is another sundown on MV Island, and probably time to go back home with many fond memories and dreams of returning to this area of beauty and remoteness. We were ready to depart. It was nice seeing our lovely boat Vera coming to pick us up. Taking down all the equipment was a job quickly done, and loading the boat was a matter of routine work. We were now heading back home, having completed some 15,000 QSOs within 96 hours of operating. A true ham spirit was experienced by all members of the group, and the Box 88 DX types were found to be hell of a nice guys. Pertti, OH2RF, with a true blue Finnish flag to remind us that we were getting back to the solid soil of Finland. It was great to visit our remote island, the dream of many, but we were also proud to be back with our own folks and families. Driving the rest of the way to the border and seeing this sign made sure that we were approaching home turf, the Republic of Finland. At this point, local DXers would normally play the national anthem, or anyway, sing a song dedicated to our girl named Vera, an exotic lady of the Canal region and of the remote island of Maly Vysotsky. Members of the entire MV Island DXpedition group are sending their warmest regards to all fellow DXers on the other side of the big water. The MV Island group, as well as all DXers across Finland and by now most likely in the USSR, are proud to support the DXCC program. There is a saying back in Finland, a country on the Arctic Circle, which goes like this: DX is and will always be. Thank you for your attention and best wishes from the folks back in Finland.
Okay, so you can start coming out. And when you come out, introduce yourself.
This is John, one of the operators of 401FS in Maly Vysotsky. Thank you.
This is Boris Stepanov, UW3 Alpha X-ray.
It is Gene, Uniform Zebra 3 America, uniform. Cheerio, old man.
That's me, you are 2ARM. Credit to OH2R.
And all the cats by the ear.
It's nice being on Maly Vysotsky Island.
You'll find you get the message, man, you'll hear it coming loud and clear. Doesn't matter what words you sing, just remember the beat's the thing. Get on the beam, carry the theme of CQ Serenade. Da-di-da-di, da-da-di-da, da-di-da-di, da-da-di-da. What do you hear over the air? CQ Serenade. Amateurs on the radio picked it up and then made it grow, spread it around, swelling the sound of CQ Serenade. From India, a call to the USA. I'm reading you, you're coming through fine. From Canada to France and the old UK. For when it comes to radio, the world's one great big party line. Tune in anywhere on the band, any corner of any land. Let's put it there, right on the air with CQ Serenade. Da-di-da-di-da-da-di-da, makes a fella feel la-di-da when he unbends, making you friends with CQ Serenade. It really doesn't matter at all, CQ, how smooth you make the signals combine. And anyone can answer the call, CQ just made with a receiver and get on the CQ party line. Take your cue from the radio, even beatniks go do-de-do. It's everywhere, filling the air, that CQ Serenade.